What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another blueprint session here on the farmstead. Today we're talking about how to operate a profitable egg enterprise or egg business. I can't tell you how many messages I get on social media, people asking, how can I start my egg business and it potentially replace an income from a spouse so a spouse can stay home. I just get this message a lot. And so I want to do a deep dive into the numbers of how do you actually make egg enterprises profitable. Whether you are launching an egg enterprise that's just an arm of your farm business already, or whether you're just trying to figure out, can you make money selling eggs from your homestead? With that being said, the biggest key to make an egg enterprise a profitable one is you're going to have to raise these chickens on pasture. Y'all, pasture equals profit. Okay? This flock of laying hens, whether you have 20, whether you have 50, whether you have 500 laying hens, you need pasture because this is going to help us reduce feed costs, which is going to increase our overall profit margins. If all you want to do is set up a chicken coop and just put it in a static location, put some fencing around it, and leave the chickens in there 24/7, 365, that spot is going to become a completely dusty, barren lot. There will be zero vegetation, zero forage for those chickens. And I understand sometimes that's all you have. That's the only option you have. But in order to make this more of a profitable business, we want to rotate these chickens around on pasture using electric poultry fencing in a mobile chicken coop. And this is going to allow us to reduce our feed costs significantly. So we need access to pasture. The peer-reviewed literature research that's out there is basically stating that if you raise your chickens out on pasture, you can reduce your feed costs by up to 25%. I personally have had times where I've been able to reduce it by half, up to 50%. But there is not data that actually suggests or supports that you can cut your feed in half, but there is data that says you can cut it by 25%. 25%, that's a big amount because your biggest two costs when it comes to running a profitable egg enterprise is going to be labor and it's going to be your feed cost. So with that being said, let's jump into the numbers. We're going to look at the average price per pound on laying hen chicken feed, okay? These are averages. Depends on where you go. If you're in grain country and you can get a really cheap organic feed from a local mill, then fantastic. But these are just average numbers from Tractor Supply and other stores like that. If you're buying conventional chicken feed, conventional feed comes out to about 35 cents a pound, okay? Bear with me here on the numbers because we're gonna calculate everything and how to actually make this a true profitable business. Conventional feed, that's gonna be your cheapest. I'm not saying I agree with the ingredients that are in the cheapest feed. That's my personal take and personal opinion. You may have a different one. If you go non-GMO, which is just a hair step above conventional, and it can potentially get a little bit better on ingredients, but all it's stating is it wasn't a genetically modified grain that was grown. But they can still use a lot of the traditional pesticides, herbicides, the list goes on. Okay, that's going to run you on average 39 cents a pound. So a hair more. Again, this depends. Depends on the ingredient list, depends on where you're getting it. Could be more, could be less. Now, organic is where you're going to have a big jump, okay? So your organic feed, on average, cost per pound is going to be about 75 cents. Or, excuse me, 74. Now, in my opinion, if you're going to start an egg enterprise, if you're wanting to sell direct to consumer, most people that are going to be buying eggs from a small, local farmstead or farm, they really care about the product that they're getting. People that want the cheapest food possible, they're more than likely going to go down to the local grocery store or the Walmart, and they're going to get their $3 dozen eggs. So in my opinion, if you're launching this, I personally would approach this from how can I capture the market of people who really care about what they eat and what they put in their body. And that means I'm more than likely going to be feeding these chickens an organic feed because I'm already raising them on pasture. And if I want to get a premium price for my pasture-raised eggs, I'm going to do that by feeding them a certified organic feed. I'm not here to get into the argument of organic versus non-organic. That is a whole nother conversation offline. I personally agree with the organic label. I think it is hugely beneficial for the consumer. But with that being said, it does cost more. Okay? It increases your cost significantly. I got a fly on my lens here. Go on, fly. So, now let's jump into an example. Let's say you're raising a flock of 50 laying hens. And this is going to be like entry level. Because I think you probably need to start with 50 if you're wanting to run an egg business. I'd probably say that's baseline. Because the egg production is going to fluctuate in seasons. Spring, they're going to lay heavy. Summer, slow down. The fall, slow down, pick back up, and then slow back down. And then winter, they really slow down. So, regardless, 50 hens, let's say on average they lay us 250 eggs per year. Okay? Each hen. If we have a chicken that lays us that many, that comes out to 12,500 eggs, which equals 1,042 dozen eggs. Okay? You know, this is just an example. You can punch in your numbers based on what you think. If you want to do 50 hens, you can do the math. Again, these are rough numbers. These are averages. So now that we have how many hens we have, what's going to be their egg production per year, we need to talk about how much feed does it actually cost in order to obtain that type of egg production. Well, industry standard confinement housing would say a 1/4 pound or 4 ounces of feed per chicken per day. But because you're going to take my advice and you're going to run a pasture rotation operation with these chickens, you're going to reduce that significantly. So 25%, remember I was telling you about the peer-reviewed literature earlier that said you can reduce it up to 25%? Well, that would bring you down to 3 ounces of feed per chicken. So if we can get it down to 3, again, I've personally seen up to 50% reduction and have had it at 2 ounces. Depending upon how good your pasture is, how much forage they have, what time of year is it, all that good stuff. But for the sake of simplicity, and because I don't want to mislead you on the numbers, I'm doing this based on the data, which says up to 25%. That would mean we can reduce to 3 ounces. Okay, that drastically changes our feed input cost. So with 1,042 dozen eggs, 3 ounces of feed per chicken, we're going to use our organic cost because I think you should target that market. Even if you live in a rural area, I think there's still plenty of people that want organic pasture-raised eggs. I want to pause and quickly talk about today's video sponsor, which is Scratch and Peck Feeds. Now, if you are starting your egg enterprise and you're wanting to get your hands on some of the best feed possible, maybe you're wanting to reach that no soy, no corn organic market of people that don't want corn or soy in their chicken feed, and Scratch and Peck Feed is your one-stop shop for it. They make some of the best feed in the country. It's soy and corn-free. It's got wholesome ingredients that you can actually read on the ingredient label. Barley, peas, flaxseed meal, all of this is organic. Fantastic company to work with. And if you want to try out some of their feed before doing a big bulk order, you can use my link down in the description. But if you also do want to order bulk, you can do that from them. We've done it here from our farmstead. So huge shout out to them for sponsoring this video. So with that being said, our cost per dozen at 1,042 dozen, feeding them 3 ounces of feed per chicken per day with organic feed is $1.82 per dozen. And feed cost. Okay. Now that's not it. You're like, oh, there we are. That's our expense. No, it's not. You got more coming down the pipeline, folks. Obviously, you're going to need to put these in a carton. Now, I recommend getting the cheapest egg cartons you can find online. It's from Webstront Supply. I've bought cartons from there for years. They work great, and they're cheap. And, well, relatively, they still cost you money, obviously. And those come out to 50 cents per dozen. Those come in a pack of 240, okay? 50 cents per carton. Excuse my handwriting. I know it's not great. Now we need to talk about the cost of the label. Your label cost is going to cost you 10 to 15 cents per label. Let's just call it 15 cents. I personally like the label printer called Brooder. You can get it on Amazon. It's a laser printer. You don't ever have ink. Check out Brooder. label printer. I think you'll like it. So we've got that. All right, now you may say we're done. Those are all our expenses that go into a dozen eggs. It is not. Your labor. People often forget about calculating their labor cost into the equation for a profitable business. Any business. If you ask any business owner and said, hey, do you skip paying labor? Like, do you do this labor free? They're going to say no. Labor is a cost input. It's an equation that goes into what we're going to price our eggs for. So do not skip calculating what you're going to pay. Even if that's you paying yourself, then I want you to put this into the equation and calculate what you need to sell your eggs for. With that being said, let's say it takes you 3 hours a week to collect eggs, fill waters, throw out chicken feed, move the chickens, wash eggs, and pack them up into cartons and put them in a farm store refrigerator or a self-serve farm stand. It may take you more, may take you less. But let's say 3 hours. 3 hours at $20 an hour. Let's just say per week. That's obviously $60 in labor costs per week. Your total hours per year is going to be 156, which brings your annual labor cost to $3,120. Okay? At the 1,042 dozen eggs per year, that's going to come out to about $3 a dozen in labor costs. You may say, well, that's a lot of money in labor. Yes, you have to calculate your time, and we're just putting 3 hours towards this a week. And that's why it drives me nuts when people say, oh, well, I get my eggs for $3 a dozen down the road. How dare you charge, $6, $7, $8, $9 a dozen? Well, your neighbor down the road's not making money. Your neighbor down the road's happy paying for some feed cost. He's not running a true business, okay? We're going to operate this like a business. Ask any business that you go and shop at in town or wherever and say, do you take labor in your calculation for your margins, your profit margins? Do you calculate that in your business? Well, absolutely. They're going to say yes. We're doing the same here. So now that we've got our true cost of production, what is our grand total? Our grand total is $5.57 per dozen. Again, this is with organic feed. It's with you taking 3 hours a week to do all the work. Obviously, if you think that's high, you can feed conventional cheap feed. And that'll get your number, relatively lower. So with that being said, your operation is pasture raised. You're feeding organic feed. And at that point, you can sell this for a premium. I think $8 a dozen is a good point. In some areas of the country, depending upon how close you are to a major metropolitan area, you may be able to push that up to 10. I mean, I've heard of some people even get up to 12. So it just depends. And of course, your feed costs. Like if you're buying high-end organic feed, then your feed costs could be even more potentially. It just depends on what you're looking at on your feed costs. But we're calculating $8 a dozen in this calculation. That's going to come out to a total gross $8 per dozen times 1,042 dozen is going to bring you to $8,336 gross sales. Obviously, that's with you selling every single dozen. That's not accounting for predator loss. That's not counting for the eggs you ate. So that's our gross number, 8,336, minus our cost per dozen, which is going to be the 557 times the 1,042. That's going to bring our total profit to $2,532. So with that being said, that gives us at that profit, that gives us about a 30% margin. Okay. And I swear, if I have someone in the comments come down and say, well, you're paying yourself. What if I wasn't paying myself? What if I was running this like a true business and I was paying someone else to do it so then I could grow the business elsewhere? I'm not arguing that right now. I'm not arguing that at all, really, because that's not a true argument for a true operating business. So with that being said, we've got roughly a 30% margin based on all these numbers I've run, which is fantastic. That's a good margin. Now, because we took labor into account, we've got some money to reinvest into the business. whether we want to continue to grow the egg enterprise or whether we want maybe to pay ourselves a bonus or maybe we need some more equipment to purchase. I personally would take this if I'm growing this egg enterprise and I wanted to double or triple production. I would buy an egg washing machine personally, because washing eggs by hand is it gets old fast and it takes up a lot of time.